Going live on YouTube. Okay. So yeah, we should be ready to go. So thanks everyone who joined us. And I just want to introduce our next user group session. So today we talk about Keptn and Jenkins interoperability, especially about cloud native delivery. So Rene from NTT Data is one of active Keptn users. Rene has already presented once at Keptn user group. And today we will have a really nice presentation about what you can do when you combine two powerful tools together. So during the presentation, if you have any questions, so we are streaming on YouTube, there is a chat, use this chat to ask any questions. For the rest, also join Keptn on Slack. You can ask questions there anytime, and we will be happy to help you. Okay, so that's it from me. And yeah, Rene, the floor is yours.
Cool. Thank you very much, Oleg, for having me again for today's Keptn user group, as already introduced. Today we will talk about Keptn and Jenkins. So it's glad to have you here as well, because you're way more experienced with Jenkins than I am because of your past. So I'm glad that we will have some cool user group today. So what do we would like to talk about today? So what our key takeaways is quite simple. We'll just take a simple look at how we integrate Keptn into existing Jenkins pipelines at all, and how we can let Keptn orchestrate those pipelines. We will learn how we can reduce complexity within our Jenkins pipelines to those integrations, and even just put in some improvements, because when we're already touching our pipelines and configuring some Keptn stuff within our Jenkins, we'll improve our pipelines with Keptn triggered quality gates just out of the box with the functionalities we have. So this is what we would like to talk about the next, I guess, 30 to 40 minutes or something like this. And hopefully there is something for every one of you to get out of it. So before we start, one picture of our legacy pipelines, or why we did this. As you can see here, in the past we had some kind of chained pipelines where we have multiple pipelines in place, and each pipeline is triggering each other pipeline, and we have pretty much set up everything within Jenkins. So from building the container, so from building the software itself, building the container, pushing into a registry, and doing the deployment, triggering tests and stuff like this, we have it all done within one single pipeline, and then chained to another pipeline, getting it to a staging environment, and then again chained, so kind of a daisy chain, to get it deployed to our production environment. And the issues we had here, or we had a lot of issues and a lot of problems. This is why we mentioned, or why we moved to let Keptn orchestrate our pipelines, because it was quite hard to troubleshoot. I have some short list why we did this in after the presentation, and we will walk through it in the presentation. This is already almost my last slide, because I love doing it within the tools, and I do not want to waste your time or get you sleep with just doing some slideshow. So this last slide this is our current architecture. So what we've built, it's quite simple. We have built up several way smaller pipelines. We have our build pipeline, which is just building our software, and this build pipeline, if we want to, is already triggering Keptn. So what happens then is that we will trigger our Keptn delivery sequence, and Keptn then fully orchestrates our deployment workflow, our delivery workflow from the deployment to any given environment. Is it dev environment or staging or production environment? Keptn will trigger our test pipeline, which runs some tests, and Keptn will evaluate our test results and then decide whether it should trigger the same sequences for any other stage, like going from dev to staging, going from staging to production, and so on. So this is what we will look into today. We will look on both ends. We will look on Jenkins, and we will look on Keptn, what we've configured and how this is working. And we will start with looking into Jenkins. So if you have never integrated Keptn into Jenkins, it's quite simple. There is a library available from the Keptn open source project, the Keptn Jenkins library. So sorry for being a little confused. There is within the slide deck, I can show it to you, and we will post it in the chat afterwards as well. There is a link with a repo which has all the URLs, all the libraries, and all the repos you're seeing within this demo collected in one single repo, and we will share the link to this repo within the chat, and it's also within the slide deck available. So basically, there is a Jenkins library available or a Keptn library available for Jenkins, and it's quite a simple and straightforward configuration to get started with Keptn and Jenkins. So not sure why my Jenkins right now is that slow. So basically, you have to configure some environment variables. Of course, you can put the token in a secret as well. This is just for testing purposes and demo purposes. I've just configured this in an environment variable. We need to configure our Keptn bridge and our Keptn endpoint, which takes all our cloud events and for the communication. And we will configure our Keptn library. Just configure this as a global pipeline library. You could, of course, configure this directly within your pipelines as well. So if you just configure for dedicated libraries, we just configure our Keptn library. In my demo, in my case, this points to my personal Jenkins repo because I did some changes on the Keptn Jenkins library for testing purposes. There's a currently pull request open, so this will be available, I guess, within the next few days within the public repo, of course, as well. So this is not that much configuration we need to do within Jenkins to get just Jenkins integrated with Keptn. And now,
yeah, Rene, sorry for interrupting you. There is a report that on YouTube site it's quite blurry. If you could zoom in a bit so that it's more visible, it would be great.
Zoom in a little.
Yes, so just make the fonts bigger so that everyone.
Sure.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
So I'm not sure if this is getting recorded as well, or if this is just a live stream. So I will just show the screens again for a short of time, and if it's recorded, you can click on pause, of course, afterwards. So we need to configure our environment variables for the Keptn bridge and the Keptn endpoint, and as well for a Keptn API token. This could be a secret as well for demo. I have it here configured directly, and we need to configure pipeline libraries. I've done it for a global pipeline libraries that I have it available in all of my pipelines. Of course, you can configure this directly in your pipelines as well, where we just configure a library for the Keptn integration and point towards the repository of the official Keptn Jenkins library, which is publicly available on GitHub. So this is all the basic configuration we need to do. The more interesting stuff, I guess, is within the pipelines itself. So again, I zoom in a little. So I've already mentioned that we started with having one large pipeline. This is my original Jenkins file, and then we have built some smaller pipelines for the integration, for getting this stuff integrated together. And we have just quite some easy steps and some good going steps within our pipeline to just trigger Keptn. So basically what we're doing is Keptn is an plane. We always trigger some events. Either we trigger it out of Jenkins to get Keptn start something, or this is when we look into our Keptn configuration. Keptn is triggering an event, which is then pushed via a webhook towards Jenkins, and Jenkins is then just answering our triggered event. So it's quite simple. We send a delivery triggered event. So what we want to do is for our project sockshop, this is when we will switch to Keptn. We have a service cards, and we will trigger our delivery for the image this pipeline just has built. So if we take a look at Jenkins and take a look at our build pipeline. So we have the cards build pipeline, which has just some few steps, and you can see I just before we started the meeting, I screwed up my pipeline a little. So, but I was able to fix it, and so we have quite a small pipeline where we just build our software, push it to registry, and then we will trigger the Keptn delivery sequence for having Keptn delivering our software to whatever stage we have configured here. So if you take a look at Keptn right now, I will start with taking a look into the shipyard file, which is basically just telling Keptn which sequences we want to have for which stages. So it's quite some straightforward shipyard, as you might see it often. Doesn't matter if in demos or production environment. We have 3 stages: development, staging, and the production stage. And within our stages, we have just a delivery sequence right now, which is consists of a few tasks. I have a deployment task and a test and an evaluation task. We're doing pretty much the same for each and every stage. So for dev, we do the same for staging, and we do the same for production. There is just one difference, because for the dev stage, we do not have any triggered on event. So we somehow need to trigger the dev stage. This is what's done within our Jenkins pipeline, where we send the deliver triggered event. So we do this for our dev stage, and our staging and our production stage are triggered once the previous stage was successful. So this is quite a simple, straightforward shipyard file. And if you take a look into Keptn, so I just have a managed environment. So usually this is blue. For me, it's somehow green or turquoise. And we can see here the deliveries and the stages. So what I will do now for demo to prove it's working, I will just trigger a sequence, and then we just follow up how it walks through for Jenkins and for Keptn. So just started a build, and usually, as you can see, it shouldn't take that long getting the Keptn delivery sequence kicked off. So I'm not sure somehow screwed up my Jenkins a few minutes ago, therefore it's a little bit slow, but better slow than nothing.
Is it usual execution speed, or does it get saturated by just local environment? Oh, it's on Amazon.
Basically, it's in general, it's running a little faster. I have quite a small Kubernetes cluster because I have all of the stuff containerized. So my Jenkins is containerized. Jenkins will spawn my build containers. And so if I'm not running it frequently, my build containers are not running. So it takes some time to getting the containers up and running.
Yeah.
But it's already, so the build is success. So you can see here, if I'm just going through my console output of my log. So here is the last step, which is reflecting the build. We push the stuff to my registry, and then we can see that Keptn is triggering the sequence. So this is where we can see what communication happens with Keptn, and even pointing directly to Keptn. And if we're going to Keptn, we can now see the delivery sequence of cards has started. So we can see what's reflected in the shipyard. So this is our delivery sequence. We are starting with a deployment, and it was that fast, the deployment, that it seems to be already done because we already see our test sequence. And this is why it gets quite interesting, because the deployment sequence was triggered by Keptn towards Jenkins. And how is this working? Also quite a cool stuff with Keptn, because within the uniform, you have a webhook service where you can register various webhooks, and this is all the magic it takes. So what we have done is that we just created some subscriptions for webhooks for our different tasks we have defined in our shipyard. So like a test triggered, a deployment triggered, and this is something different for getting another demo. So with the webhooks, you can do quite some granular configuration for which Keptn event. And right now we're doing just some standard deployment with test and deliver and stuff like this. Basically, you could name your event whatever you want to, and then just subscribe the webhook to your event, give some meet information like I have done for this project workshop and for which stages I want to subscribe this event. And if you take a look at our webhook, it's quite simple. We just call, in my case, it's a post because of multi-branch pipelines, but you can just get your Jenkins. So just put a get request in there, and you just trigger the Jenkins pipeline with some metadata, like what stage do we want, which test strategy in this case do we want to have, and some Keptn metadata. And if you take a look at Jenkins again, we should now see our deployment pipeline either still running or already finished. So it's already finished. So our deployment pipeline was just triggered by Keptn for this webhook. So this is the quite cool stuff, because we have just defined our sequence within the shipyard, where we have our tasks, and within Keptn, we just say for which task do we want to trigger which Jenkins pipeline. And this is the pipeline which just ran a few seconds or a few minutes ago, where let's take a look at the console output again, where we're just deploying our stuff to a given namespace, and then send back the finish event to Keptn once our deployment is finished. And Keptn then, we take again at our sequence. We see the deployment event is finished, it's green, and then we will trigger test event. The test event itself, we have a webhook subscribed to it, and the webhook is starting another Jenkins pipeline. It's our test pipeline. There are some JMeter tests running. It's a load pipeline. And then we will trigger our evaluation. And if you take a look at our deploy pipeline, you can see again it's quite simple to have Jenkins, to have Keptn integrated. We're doing some deployment stuff, some deployment configuration, and at the end we just trigger again Keptn and tell Keptn that we have successfully deployed our software, and we want you to put the stuff to the next stage. Just also take a look into the Jenkins file, how this is configured within Jenkins. So just a Jenkins file deploy pipeline in my case, where we can see the parameters again. So the stage, Keptn context ID, trigger ID, and an image ID. Those are all the information we just gather from Keptn through already available metadata. Then send a finish event to Keptn. Tell Keptn, it's quite simple, send the finish event of the event deployment, getting the Keptn context and the trigger ID that Keptn can find its sequence again. We just put in some metadata. It's also quite cool. So our deployment strategy, or whatever metadata you want in Keptn. If you take a look at the deployment event, we see the labels we have put in within Jenkins. And also, if you take a look at the metadata here, at the event payload, and we can see our customized event payload, which we submitted to Jenkins. So this is quite some cool feature, some great feature, because if you need this data in any other system, in any other environment, in any other tools, you can just put it in your payload of your deployment or whatever event, and then you can access it on Keptn with some variables. So this was the deployment. Then we can already have started a test event, which is triggering again another pipeline, and then we have, in our case, it's evaluated with Dynatrace, and then we have implemented a quality gate with some evaluations. We can look at those evaluations on how this build was going. You can see there is something yellow because we have got some issues, but still not red. So we're going for our next stage. And this is all, and this is the cool thing here, because we take again at the uniform, we have just looked at the deployment triggered event, which triggered our deployment pipeline. Then we have triggered we have triggered the test. We have subscribed to the test triggered event, and we just trigger our testing pipeline. So it's basically almost the same webhook, looking at our Jenkins, but just triggering the test pipeline again with some metadata, whatever we want to. So we can add a lot of metadata here from the previous steps, what was in the payload there, and triggering again the pipelines. So if you now take a look at our test pipeline, as it already is finished as well, we can just see that it just executed some JMeter tests, and this is quite some important topic because there are multiple different features within the Jenkins pipeline, because you can just trigger a Kepin quality gate out of the pipeline. But what we did is that we just again send a finished event to Kepin and let Kepin orchestrate all the other stuff. So it's quite some simple. We will look into this step in a second, where we just run some simple JMeter tests. Let's take a look at the pipeline script itself. We just run some JMeter tests and getting the event finished back to Kepin. So again, our parameters, just some stage, some Kepin information, and we didn't change that much within our pipeline. We just added 2 steps. One of them is quite interesting because we will always update our SLIs and SLOs. So we can look into this if this is required, where we just have defined what Kepin should evaluate. So we just define our metrics, which should be monitored and evaluated, and we just define our objectives, so what criteria we need to meet. So we just add those resources to Kepin. So if we change something, because there needs to be a change, we easily add those resources, those updated resources already for our pipeline. We will execute our JMeter tests, and afterwards, just like we see in the deployment pipeline, we will send a finished event. This time it's a test event and not a deployment event with the payload we have here. So for the test step, our payload, which is required for the next step, is a start and a stop, start and end time frame. That Kepin is able, when triggering the quality gate, to say which time period do we need to check. When did the test take place to get the quality gate triggered properly, and get the evaluation done for the respective time frame. So if we take a look at our tests up here, we can see the webhook service started. This was our subscription, and we can see once it's done, and if we take a look again at the payload here, we can see our customized payload, which we put in Jenkins with the start and the end time frame, and we hand this over to our evaluation phase, where this is some Kepin built-in features, where we just evaluate our defined SLIs and SLOs. And once those stages is finished, as you remember our shipyard, the staging stage will be triggered once the delivery is finished. We are going to the staging, doing exactly the same, this time with a 100% evaluation. And once this is triggered, we are going for production. And within the production, we have also some delivery. Within production, we only have the deployment step triggered by within the delivery sequence. And then we start an evaluation 5 minutes after the deployment has finished to get checked if there are some issues within our deployments. This is nothing related to Jenkins anymore. Basically, you could bring in some kind of rollbacks. Sorry.
So basically, in this case, you just do follow-up evaluation for deployment. But what happens if this evaluation fails? Can you fall back from this pipeline?
So there would be a different. Oh, basically, yeah, we could fall back from with the pipelines as well, because we have somehow parameterized it and can work with the image IDs. So this is something which would work in this case, because we can just again if you define in our shipyard, I think I have defined it. Yeah, if you define a rollback sequence or a rollback task, you can just again register a webhook or subscribe a webhook with a given pipeline. And once the Kepin is triggering the rollback task due to the failed evaluation, which we have here, then you can just again kick off your pipeline, having the image ID in place, having the image ID in the metadata, and roll back to the previous version. This is some use case which should work. It's currently not implemented in this demo, to be honest, but basically this is some use case which would work. And taking again a look at our small slide deck. So going from here, so have all within Jenkins and all data chained, to have it orchestrated by Kepin. there might be some questions why we should use this or why we should do this, because in first place it might look a little bit overheaded. But just within our example, we reduced lines of code within the Jenkins file by more than 30%. This is because we had a lot of redundancies, because we had a lot of redundant pipelines and a lot of redundant pipeline scripts having the deployment to staging, which almost looks similar like the deployment to dev or to production, but with some different parameters and with some different stuff. And just having this orchestrated with Kepin, we just say, okay, we have one build pipeline which builds our piece of software. We have one deploy pipeline, and just with a few parameter and triggered by Kepin, we tell what we need to deploy where and when. And the same for testing, of course. So we reduced a lot of code, we reduced a lot of complexity within our pipelines to just to get rid of redundancies within code. And of course, as we're already dealing with adapting our Jenkins pipelines, it was quite easy to build in quality gates. In the past, we had some performance plugins. I can show it, of course, where we just usually, as this is for sure some common use case, where we just compare manually or just compare with some high thresholds here our builds and doing some manual performance analysis. We even managed to increase the quality by just implementing quality gates with just one easy line, because we already know that, or we're already triggering Kepin or send back the finish to Kepin. So we just trigger the quality gate within Kepin, just updating the SLIs and the SLOs within the pipeline. So it was just one easy step for stuff which was done previously manually. And the last but not least thing is, and this is quite some important, is up the integration with any other tooling. So because of course Jenkins is quite powerful, and I assume there is almost no plugin which is not available for integrating stuff within Jenkins. But with Kepin or with the stuff we have built, it's quite easy, for example, to just for the deployment, just unsubscribe the webhook and let, for example, Helm do the deployment, and then again walking with the test steps with Jenkins. So it's quite easy with having this orchestration in place that we decide, okay, the delivery sequence is triggered through our Jenkins pipelines, because we still want Jenkins to build our software and push it to any registry. It will trigger our delivery sequence, and for testing purposes or just for production, we want to move the deployment to Helm and not get deployed or get our stuff deployed for Jenkins. Or we move our test sequence, our test tasks to any other tooling. So we just deactivate the webhook towards Jenkins and point it to any other tools, or with the out-of-the-box integrations of Kepin. So with having this orchestration in place, it's for us quite easy to exchange some building blocks with some other toolings than Jenkins. And this is within the previous, it was quite hard, or to get the right plugin working, or to work with curl and triggering post and stuff like this, and then somehow trying to validate the result. This is now all done by Kepin, and we can easily replace some single steps.
Yeah, speaking of tools, there is a question from the audience. So the Gmeter evaluation you run in the demo, how does it happen? Do you use Gmeter service for Kepin, or is it just a part of Jenkins execution flow?
In this case, it's just a part of the Jenkins execution. So this is really built. I have a Jmeter container, I have a Jmeter working node for my Jenkins pipeline, and have just some common tests defined within my Jmeter, and this is running slowly with Jenkins and Jmeter itself. So we do not bring any information about the test or the test result itself to Kepin. We just tell Kepin, hey Kepin, we have finished our test event. We have started at time XYZ and we have ended at time ABC. Please validate, or please go to the next phase. We don't even say this. We just say we've finished our test event, and Kepin, as it orchestrates our sequence, is aware that once the test phase is done, we will go further with the evaluation step. And in our case, our services are monitored with Dynatrace, because of course can monitor with Prometheus and let do the evaluation against data out of Prometheus, but we do not put any recorded data from Jmeter towards Kepin. This is slowly done with the monitoring, with the observability of our services, and we just trigger the evaluation sequence with the information we have collected during our previous steps, like the deployment stuff, with the configured SLIs and SLOs, and of course with our test timeframe.
Yeah.
Which timeframe should be evaluated.
On the Jenkins side, do you use plugins like performance plugin or maybe XUnit plugin? Because yeah, they could be used to unify this event generation flow if there is a pipeline library.
Yeah, basically, yeah, we are using the performance signature plugin, or we have used it in the past, and have almost manually compared our builds. So this is still here. The performance report is still available because I've just not excluded it from a pipeline, so it's still available. But to be honest, we don't use it anymore, as Kepin evaluates already everything. Also, something I guess which is on the plus side, because you do not need to get rid of this, so you can have this in parallel and in common, and still validate it on your own. Still look at the performance reports, and where you of course have a comparison as well. So just quite some basic stuff with the previous build, and you still can have this in place and still use Kepin in advance to get this validated automatically.
Yeah, that's nice. And so when preparing to send the event, how do you extract the data on the Jenkins side? Do you use just the data API?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
So how do you extract data from Jenkins? So basically this report to send it back to Keptn. Do you use custom Groovy pipeline, or do you access this data through REST API?
Basically, this is not pushed to Keptn at all right now in my team. It is.
Okay.
You could, but I'm not sure about this. Need to look into this. But basically, you could add something like this, where you just put in the Keptn address source to get the files towards the Keptn repo. Or, and this is also always possible, is put it in the event payload, for example. So if you just have some kind of arrays or some kind of information, you always could put this into your event payload, which is then, if you take a look again in Jenkins, so my payload is simple, it's just and you can add any other tasks which are triggered after your given event. So if you want to put in some additional information here, we can put this in here. And if you take a look at the webhook service, for example, and just going for this one, just to show what you can do here. And here you can then access all the data which is available. So like there is a data, there is a deployment, then you have some labels. We have some also all the information which is somewhere defined within your payload or within your data can be accessed again through within Keptn, and you can put this in again within all the you want to trigger. So if you want to trigger another webhook for getting stuff evaluated or something like this, for example, you then just can put in your data here within the webhook URL or whatever configuration. So this is not only working for webhooks, but it's somehow the most common case.
Thank you. So, Rob John mentioned multiple times in the chat that he would also be happy to see a webhook integration with Jenkins for common cases. Because yes, with standardized Jenkins API, it would be really nice if we could use REST API. So yeah, basically through webhooks, etc. And for Jenkins, for some cases, we also generate basically Open API or Swagger, like you prefer. And it means that if we do some UX improvements on the Keptn side, we could actually easily integrate through webhooks for common cases.
Yeah, so basically, I really love the webhook concept which is in place right now, because it's, first of all, it's of course fast, and it's so easy to adapt and so easy to configure with just saying, okay, for my dev and my staging environment, I still want my deployment to be done through Jenkins, but for my production environment, I would like to trigger another webhook or to do the deployment for Helm, for example, because I have some canary deployments and I do not want to get rid of or to get somehow screwed up with the files. I can just do it for Helm with production. So this is quite cool. And because what we are doing during the deployment, it's quite simple. It's all running on a Kubernetes cluster. So what we are doing is not only simple, it's almost some kind of stupid, because I just set some values. So just going through my channels, which I want to have deployed, and replace some placeholders, replace some variables, and then do a simple kubectl apply. So this is basically not the best deployment for my demo case. It's quite cool, but this is the case where it's just becomes quite easy, because this is Jenkins is somehow oversized for just doing these 3 lines of code to get something deployed. There is Helm a way better choice. But if I want to test this, or if I just do not want to get completely rid of Jenkins because I've already done so much stuff, it's quite easy with Keptn and with the orchestration to decide what steps I want to move from Jenkins to another tool. So I want to move within Jenkins from one pipeline to another. So just creating new additional pipelines and then move step by step towards Keptn orchestration. This is quite easy with the webhook service, which is currently available with Keptn. So I really love the concept of doing this. And for us, it was a huge impact. All for these 3 points do not look that great, but reduced the lines of code, reduced the time of troubleshooting, because our pipelines failed quite often because of just some typos or some availabilities, or we not were that good with coding our pipelines error prone. So it helped a lot. Also the quality gates, of course, this is some quick win or some easy win, and most of the integration with any other tool to play around and to show some use cases and just get in some more stable configuration within our environments. If you take a look, I'm not sure if how much builds are still in there, but if you take a look at my old pipeline, which was, so basically you need to say that this is a demo application, so it's not on production, so we can just try anything here. But if you take a look at my demo pipeline, you can see how often it fails for the place where it somehow went screen, and then we just have some timeouts, or there were some reasons they were reported. Then we have this daisy chain where we need to deploy the staging out of this pipeline. So we need to go to our next pipeline. We need to check when there fails something, what has failed and why it has failed. And from the staging pipeline, we might then deploy, or we might then trigger the deploy pipeline. So it's it was always hard to follow up what Jenkins does and what we are doing here right now. And this is way easier with having just the orchestration through Keptn and just having my 3 stages and having some clear sequence, and can just see when there failed something, what failed, what happened. So it's really helped us a lot in getting stuff done faster.
Yeah, so the main precondition for such architecture is not passing data between stages on the Jenkins side, which already makes it a kind more manageable.
Exactly,
because
yeah.
you don't have context, and all context you have is either stored in artifacts or in a Keptn database, and you can easily restart stages, etc. So there is a pending proposal from Johannes to have automatic restart and UI for restarting stages in Keptn. And
so basically my Jenkins pipelines are, I would say, they were stateful. So you need to remember somehow the state in order to get all the sequences triggered correctly. And now they're not stateful anymore. So it's just some sequences, just some plain stupid pipelines, which are just doing some stuff and then they're closed again. And if they fail in the middle, there is nothing to troubleshoot anymore, because I can just trigger dedicated sequences, dedicated tasks, and just start where I want to start and not always walk through the complete pipeline again. So it's really cool. And as you can see within the Jenkins file, it's quite it's a one-liner more or less to get this integrated. And with just one simple send finished event. Then Kepin will take care of what to do next, and I do not need to take care of this within my Jenkins files anymore.
Yeah, that's really cool. One question from the chat. Do you use Monaco monitoring as code in your environment?
Yeah, I'm basically I'm not using to use it in this environment. I'm not sure I don't use it in this environment, but technically, yeah, I'm using it quite often. But I'm also using it. This is not sure if this is the right place here. I'm also using Terraform for configuring Dynatrace. Because Monaco, because Terraform is for me is one of the most important plus on the Terraform side is that it's stateful. So I can destroy my configuration, I can update my configuration easily. I'm aware of what's configured right now, and also I can integrate it into pretty much everything else or anything else because of just the standard of Terraform. But this is somehow is up to the use case, of course. There are a lot of cases where Monaco suits way better to Terraform.
So the question was coming basically is whether you have an example when Keptn, Jenkins, Jmeter, and Monaco are used together. So basically when you can manage everything as code. I don't have such demo, but yeah, maybe we can follow up later and find it.
Yeah.
So please ping us on Keptn Slack and we will try to find something. I guess we already have it somewhere from Monaco or in Keptn tutorials.
I assume as well, yeah.
So, and a question from me. So, what other integrations do you currently lack in Jenkins or in Keptn to make it more efficient for your use cases?
Was this a question towards me or towards the chat?
No, it's a question from me. So basically, what would you like to see in Keptn or in Jenkins to make your software delivery pipelines even better, even more manageable, whatever? So any wish list?
Yeah, good. This is quite a hard question for me because I've implemented already my own Jenkins libraries, and just what have I adapted? Yeah, basically I've adapted the send finished event, but there is already a pull request open. What lacks in integration? Hopefully someone from the chat is already answering your question, because I'm still thinking about what was the hardest part within the last few days. And
yeah, if please feel free to bring up these comments in the chat. I know that Rob is there, so probably we will get a list of 100 services he would like to see, preferably yesterday, but yeah, this is how the community works. Yeah, actually, there is a question from Rob. So you have the cloud event status and result basically hard-coded. So have you done any logic or would it be an enhancement idea to translate the Jenkins status to cloud event values automatically?
Basically, this should be, yeah, this is hard-coded in my, so result and status is hard-coded in my team environment. Basically, this should be already possible, at least the status, because no, it's not possible right now, because the status success is only done once the pipeline is completely finished, and as this is one of our pipeline steps, we do not have this status available right now. So yeah, but this would be some interesting thing, implementing the send finished event in a post pipeline step, which runs always, even if the pipeline fails, having this in place at the post step, because this is one issue I have right now. If my pipeline still fails for some reason, Kepin is not aware of it. So this is where you can see some aborted cases. This is where my deployment just stuck because Jenkins failed or Jenkins crashed or whatever reason. And within the webhook services, I always wait for my service to respond. So this is something you can configure within the webhook services. And for Jenkins or for what we did, it's important that you mark send finish event by the webhook receiver. And in case the webhook receiver is not sending anything, your sequence will stuck. Not sure if it will stuck in an unfidelity state, or it will somewhat, but I've reported this manually. So this is something I need to update my demos, or we need to think about to have some kind of best practices where we implement a post action within our pipelines, which always trigger kepin and finish event. And then we always already have the status of the pipeline. We could put in some actual status and get the sequence proceeded, because right now I need to import it manually if my pipelines fail for some reason.
Yeah, maybe there is actually an alternative way, because it's true that Jenkins doesn't set the status right away through API. At the same time, you can access status for particular stages and even steps through API. So this is how it gets visualized, for example, in Blue Ocean, in Pipeline Graph. And there is also OpenTelemetry plugin, which sends information about your pipeline execution, basically as OpenTelemetry traces. So what could be done there in theory, instead of relying on event sent to Keptn directly, we could access data submitted to monitoring system at the moment. And also there is a project called CD events, which actually intends unifying different events for CI/CD systems, and Jenkins is one of prospective adopters. We actually have already Cloud Events plugin. So maybe through this plugin, we could provide more observability in what happens on the Jenkins side and propagate it to Keptn in unified standard, so that we can process it and without much magic logic on requiring development. Yeah, technically in Jenkins, maybe, there was the desired approach, but if you develop your pipelines in scripted pipeline, there is also try-catch block. So
Yeah.
in theory, if anything happens, you can use try-catch, and catch will catch anything, including syntax errors in your pipeline. So maybe it's one of the ways to send a Keptn event in a chip mode, because you just catch a failure, send it back to Keptn, and then exit from the pipeline.
Yeah, this would be some cases you can see here. I mostly use, or I've mostly used script blocks, which is basically not the best case you can do, because this will do not throw any error, or it will not throw not any error, but you will, of course, we see a lot of errors. But yeah, this is some great approach.
Yeah, I have to admit that I'm still a fan of scripted pipeline. Yeah, it's a topic for holy war in the Jenkins community. But yeah, in principle, you can do that. And in a scripted pipeline, you can also have handlers for failing events. So you can also integrate some fallback logic.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like a really nice pipeline, and yeah, thanks a lot for demonstrating it today. Because there are many integrations between Kepin and Jenkins, and basically you either use them as quality gates, whether you trigger, let's say, Kepin from Jenkins to evaluate quality gate. And in this case, we have opposite integration when Kepin is actually used as main orchestrator. And we have Jenkins, that rather is automation engine that automates particular pipelines and particular steps in the main pipeline, while Jenkins does, while Keptn does the most of orchestration and benefits from its event-driven nature and all the metrics we receive. So both ways of these integrations are totally legit. It depends on your use cases. But it's really cool to see this integration, because this is what is not always presented. So many people go with opposite direction, because it allows to reuse the pipelines as much as possible. And here it's nice to see that actually adopting another way simplifies and improves your pipelines.
Yep. So if there are any additional questions or additional topics we want to discuss, just drop a message within Slack. Just join the Keptn Slack channel where Oleg and myself are also available. Drop us a hint if we can do anything else for you or need to discuss further. I've already learned again a lot by myself while improving my pipelines for some resilience and getting the event back to Keptn in any case. I will do an update on my demos and hopefully we'll be able to somehow present this again with an updated and even better solution.
Okay, so.
And what Jan just, what Rob just mentioned within the chat, some quite updated the path in the end. Of course, we've just done this demo with Jenkins because there's a library within Jenkins as well available, but basically it doesn't matter if, from a Keptn perspective, if you have Jenkins on the other end or if you have any other CD tooling, which can be triggered via a webhook. You can, of course, do this with any other tooling as well.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. And yep, I think that it's a very legit way of integration. And for me, yeah, I've been using Jenkins for ages, and I still believe that Jenkins is one of the best automation tools. But for event-driven orchestration, yeah, this is somewhere when I want to use Keptn. So, and yeah, there is no native way to do it in Jenkins, unfortunately. So I think that such combination could be nice. We also have a Google Summer of Code project. I'm not sure whether it happens this year or not, which would integrate Jenkins pipelines as a part of Keptn execution plane. So there is a project called Jenkins File Runner, which basically packages Jenkins pipeline executor as a Docker image, and you can execute it anywhere. And the idea that you can take Keptn job executor service, put Jenkins pipeline execution right there. If you do not need Jenkins UIs, etc., it's a legit case. And then basically you could do similar pipeline, but by mostly using Keptn capabilities and by not having fixed Jenkins instance, which also can protect you from some mistakes, from some runtime issues. And I guess in the case of Rene, with basically stateless Jenkins pipelines, it would be quite helpful. So yeah, it's maybe a bit moonshot right now, but well, it's one of my topics for a hackathon for me if we don't have a Google Summer of Code project.
Yeah.
Or maybe we will have, let's see. Actually, the deadline for JSOC applications is just in 5 minutes. So soon we will know what projects we might have this year. Yeah. So going back to the presentation, so thanks a lot. And yeah, Rob says that if you have more ideas how to do webhook integrations, etc., please contact him because he would be happy to help with having this integration and guidelines listed on Artifact Hub. And yeah, I think it would be beneficial for everyone to have these opportunities.
Cool.
Okay, so thank you. Any closing words?
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you. We are always looking for new speakers. And yeah, if you use Keptn, please feel free to join us. Any presentation, no slides needed, just any use case, your success story, or maybe not so success story with a lot of deep dive. And if needed, we'll make sure to bring Keptn maintainers there so that you can say everything you think what needs to be improved in Keptn. So any feedback is appreciated. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a nice evening or day, wherever you're located.
Yeah, so I'll stop the broadcast. If you could stay for a few minutes, Rene, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, thanks to everyone who watched it. I see you in 1 month.
Bye.
Bye.